Welcome to ACU's Talk with Youth Workers and Social Workers webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Brodie and I work in the ACU Future Students team. Before we get started, I'd really like to acknowledge our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's spiritual and cultural connection to country. In continuing ACU's commitment to reconciliation, I would like to commence this webinar by acknowledging the First Peoples and the traditional owners and custodians of the country where ACU campuses are located. I'm joining you from Ngunnawal country in Canberra. We respectfully acknowledge our elders past and present and remember that they have passed on their wisdom to us in various ways. Let us hold this in trust as we work and serve our communities. Tonight, we are joined by Mark, Nicola and Shadrach, who are all ACU alumni working across youth work and social work, and by Jamila, a current social work student. A little later on tonight, they're going to share their experiences as youth or social workers and of being ACU students. They will answer your questions. We will have a bit of a conversation, help you all get a little bit of a clearer idea what youth workers and social workers do. Throughout the session, you are able to ask questions via the Q&A function. Our team will put some questions to the panel and then they will also answer others directly. So please feel free to ask questions related to our panelists' experience in that Q&A section. If you do have very specific questions, things like I've done an ACU guarantee application, how do I find out about that? We're not really able to answer those in tonight's webinar. So you can also contact our friendly Ask ACU team via our website. I'm just going to go through very quickly what is youth work, what is social work, but I'm not going to go into too much depth because I really want to hear that from people actively engaged in the fields. Youth workers work to improve young people's social and personal development, helping them establish a voice and a sense of place in their communities. If you're interested in human rights, social justice, and changing lives for the better, both youth work and social work are for you, but you should definitely consider social work. As a social worker, you will improve individual and community well-being by addressing challenges such as inequality, discrimination, violence, and other types of harassment. At ACU, we offer both undergraduate and postgraduate courses in social work and undergraduate in youth work. So we have a Bachelor of Social Work on our Brisbane, Canberra and Strathfield campuses. That's for people who don't have a degree yet or who might not have a degree that would meet the requirements to get into social work master's degree. The Bachelor of Youth Work is available on Blacktown and Melbourne campuses. Our Masters of Social Work, which is a qualifying course. So what that means is that it qualifies you to be a social work. It's not a course for people who are already qualified social workers. That's available in Canberra and Strathfield this year and is likely to also move online next year. So there are plenty of options if you are perhaps a career changer looking to move into something new. We also do have some pathways into our youth work program for those in Blacktown and in Melbourne. So our Diploma in Youth Work is a one-year introductory program for students interested in a range of entry-level careers in youth work. So you can either do the Diploma in Youth Work and then go out and work in the field, or you can use that diploma to get you entry into the Bachelor of Youth Work. In this pathway diploma, you will get an insight into the diverse challenges and needs of young people in a range of public and community-based settings. And then you'll also be prepared for further study in the field. Students who've completed the Diploma in Youth Work will be able to commence in the second year of the Bachelor of Youth Work. So you can either, as I said, leave with that diploma and go out and work in the field, or you can go straight into the second year of the bachelor's degree. Joining us tonight is current student Jamila Hogan. Jamila is studying a Bachelor of Social Work on our Canberra campus. I'll have a bit of a chat with her very soon. And then we also have alumni Mark Wilson, who is the Director of Education and Training at the YMCA Bridge Project. Mark studied a Bachelor of Youth Work with ACU. Shadrach Keddy is a social worker in the Gungahlin Mental Health team here in the ACT, and Shadrach completed our Masters of Social Work qualifying course recently. And then we have Nicola Barker. Nicola is a social worker with the Gallumbilla Aboriginal Health Service, and she completed a Bachelor of Social Work with ACU. So Jamila, you're a social work student. You're in year 2 and a bit, I think.
2 and a bit, yes, that's correct.
Why did you choose like social work? How did you come to consider that to be something you'd like to study?
So was looking at quite a wide range of options while I was still in high school, and a lot of them were to do with working with people directly. And I was always really passionate about working with people, but a lot of them felt very clinical, and not something I wasn't ever fully keen on it. And then I chatted to someone about all the options. I was like, I like paramedicine and psychology, but I can't really find my niche. And they said, well, it sounds like you're really interested in people. Have you considered social work? And I realized I'd worked with some really great social workers when I was young, who had been really supportive to me and who had put me on a really great life path. And I thought that sounds like some really, really rewarding work. And then when I read into it more, it sounded like an incredible opportunity. And so I went for it.
And why did you choose ACU for your social work course?
I really appreciated the small community, particularly like how supportive it was. I found that was really great for me. I already find the 3 buildings hard and I get lost in those, so it works out really well. And I heard really wonderful things about them seeing you as more than just a number on a paper or just your grades, and them seeing you as a more holistic person and supporting you in becoming a more holistic person as well. And I really appreciated that component of it.
And has that been your experience as an ACU student?
100%. I really loved the feeling at ACU, particularly like the Canberra campus is so small and so community minded. There's always an event going on. They're not just focused, they're really focused on supporting you in your studies, but they're also focused on supporting you as a human being and making sure you have a good time at uni and not feeling too overwhelmed by it, while also really helping you in your academic areas. I found the lecturers and the tutors to be really supportive, and also the other students are all really like-minded, awesome people, and I've found it a really incredible community to be a part of. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Excellent. I think one of the things that you might kind of ask a social work student is, what do you study? Like, what does uni look like for you? What subjects are you doing?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. It's one that I had before I even started. I was like, so what do we actually do? So you have social work courses that are specifically called like social work classes, but then you'll also have a couple of psychology classes, sociology classes, and Indigenous health. The social work classes, the ones I'm doing at the moment, social work and mental health. I recently finished social work skills with individuals. So social work theories and ethics. You have a wide range of social work working with a diverse number of groups. So social work working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander groups, or social work working with culturally and linguistically diverse groups. Then you have social work classes that focus more on ethics and theories, which is really cool to get the background knowledge as well. And then you also have ones that are specific, like working with families and young people, or working with individuals. So you get that really hands-on experience. They teach you the theories and ethics behind it, but they also teach you the stuff that you're going to use in practice, that you can actually apply. So you get a mix of both, which is really supportive, and you get all the background knowledge behind it so that you understand why you're using the practices and methods you're using when you're working with people. And I found that really cool, so that they didn't just throw you in and say, this is how you do something, but teaching you to critically think about why you're doing something and how you've come to that decision, so that you can support people in the best way.
Sounds like a good mix of kind of learning some of the, I guess, more practical stuff alongside, really engaging with academic content. Yeah. I'm going to swap over to some of our alumni now. Thanks, Jamila. Mark, I think since you're the lone youth worker in a sea of social workers, we might start with you. How would you describe youth work to us?
Yeah, look, I would say for me, youth works. Sorry, youth work means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but for me, how I would describe it, I would say that it's a lot of relationship building. I feel that every day that's pretty much my focus as a youth worker. Is building the relationships, then maintaining them, and then it's kind of dissolving them in a way. And that sounds it doesn't sound great, but your job essentially is to you build a relationship so you can help people, help young people move in a different direction that's more positive towards them. And then you maintain that, you help them through that as well. And then at the end, you don't want to cause a dependence on your service. So when I say dissolve, that kind of just happens quite naturally if it's kind of a smooth transition out. But yeah, so I love youth work. I think it's a great thing. And before even getting into it, I'd really know. I was never intended to get into this sort of work, but once I have, it's been really rewarding.
How did you end up there then, if it wasn't where you intended to be?
Yeah, it was funny. Well, I was actually working in a nightclub, and I was working there for a few years, and I was managing it, and then I just got to a point where I was sick of, when you're at parties and you're having these conversations with people, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" and all this sort of stuff. I was kind of, and they were like, "Oh, you're still working at that place," So I was kind of sick of having that conversation. So I thought I might go back to uni. Well, go to uni as a mature age student, and then I just I don't know. I had a conversation with my mum actually, and she's a nurse, so she thought I'd be good as a youth worker, and then I just went to the ACU Open Day. It was actually my first Open Day, and I got a really good vibe about the place. So, and the course coordinators that I was speaking to. So, it happened quite quickly actually. But
We'll have to let
yeah.
We'll have to let those course coordinators know that, somebody can turn up not even knowing what they want to study, and your one conversation really does make that difference.
Yeah, that's it. So, so just it happened pretty quickly. I actually went through the pathway of going the diploma first. And then after I finished the diploma, I transferred into the bachelor.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
We love people like you, Mark.
Yeah, that's it.
We love people that can show the many different ways to get where you want to be.
Yeah.
So I might start with Nicola. Nicola, you're a social worker up at the Galambila, I hope I'm saying that right, please correct me if I'm not, Galambila Aboriginal Health Service. Can you describe to us what social work is to you?
Yeah, firstly, I want to acknowledge country and pay my respects to the elders past and present and emerging. I'm a proud Mulwari woman myself, and I'm living on Gumbaynggirr country, where I grew up in sunny Coffs Harbour on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. Social work is very diverse, sometimes complex, but incredibly amazing that you don't know what your day is going to look like. Social work to me is the ability to walk alongside someone in their journey towards healing.
I like that. It's great. So Shadrach, what would you have to add to that? What is social work to you?
Well, thank you very much. And I really appreciate this opportunity to, have this interaction with, those who are wanting to come into this profession, students who are already in and those who are wanting to come into it. So what I would want to add to what Nicola said, for me, I see social work as working with diverse group of people to address any concerns or issues that they will have. And if I talk about concerns or issue, it could be social, it could be financial, it could be economic, it could be around health and well-being, it could be emotional or psychological. So working with them in that journey to address any of these concerns that I have mentioned, that is how I see social work. So that's what I will add to Nicola's response.
Excellent. So one of our guests has preempted my next question, which I love to see happen. We'll start with Mark again. What does a day in the life of a youth worker look like? And I feel a little bit like the question's going to be which day.
Yeah.
I can imagine there's a lot of variety.
Yeah, that's it. It's as Nicola said, every day's different. And but for me, I work mainly out of a prison here in Melbourne. So Ravenhall Correctional Centre out in the west of Melbourne, and I'm there 2 days a week, and then I'm at our office in Footscray 2 days a week, and then I work from home 1 day a week. So if I'm in the prison, I'm like facilitating like a job ready program. So young people that are currently incarcerated, I work with them on everything from like what they value and you know what they want to do moving forward, how they want to spend, you know, their day-to-day lives when they get out. And then if I'm in the office, we run a social enterprise. So we've got a lot of young people working for us that have come directly from prison. So I'll be working with them on, you know, smaller sessions and everything, educational sessions, budgeting money, food and nutrition, structuring their days and that sort of stuff. So it's very different. And then if I'm at home, it's usually just catching up on other work. But yeah, it's very different. One day I could be just one-on-one with a young person, or I could have a group of 10. Running through our educational programs and that sort of stuff.
Wow, it's a lot of variety. And yeah, that's really interesting about the social enterprise. We might tap into that a little bit more further on. Shadrach, what is a typical day in your job like?
Well, like Mark said, every day is different. Like each day comes with its own, issues. So, but typically what I do or what we do is we have what we call multidisciplinary team meetings, and we hold these meetings every morning at 9. And during this period, we discuss cases that had been brought to us. We've got a system where messages are sent to us regarding clients who are having, episode or issues. So we discuss that, and then we assign the clients to each individual clinical manager to follow up. Once we finish with this MDT, personally, I've got my client base that I work with. So what I do is I check on them, which is a welfare check, basically calling to find out how they are going, how things are going for them, checking on their mental health, checking on their mental state to see if there's any concern that, they want to share with you so that you work together to address those concerns. Other days too, if I've got reports to complete, then I do it. So some of the reports revolves around psychiatric treatment orders. So this is basically orders where clients who are not adhering to the support, they need to be put on PTO, and then that will allow them to adhere or conform to treatment care and support. Before you do this PTO, the client has to fall within certain criteria. As we trek along, I will talk about that. Other days too, I facilitate psychiatric reviews, and I also take active part during these reviews where the psychiatrist will be having conversation with the clients regarding their mental health and how things are going for them, and if there's any support that they will require. So basically, this is what happens in a typical day. But sometimes things can go out of hand. You can have situation where clients will have their episodes, and then you have to attend swiftly to them to prevent any escalation. So these are some of the things that happens here. And then just a quick one. I just want to just say that whatever contributions I'm making here is my personal contribution or observation and everything. It got nothing to do with where I'm working. It's just my personal observation and conversation I'm having with the team to know what my experiences are. So I'm not speaking on behalf of my team or on my service. So I just want to make this clarification. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Shadrach. I think it's quite important, particularly when you're working with people.
Yes.
Nicola, what does a typical day in your job look like?
Sometimes you can plan your day and you go in and it's nothing like that. And that's the joys of social work and working with people. I see Mark nodding, and I guess it's the same for youth work as well. My day, I specialize in child and family work. I love that space. But as the only Aboriginal social worker in our area, I'm pulled into so many different spaces to offer some consultation. So I work with the police to support DV victims and their families. I work at the hospital in the mental health unit and the acute services team to ensure that our community are able to get a proper discharge. And then we follow up at our Galambilla Aboriginal Health Service, which is a medical service. So this morning I started my morning at 7 a.m. I went to CrossFit with young people I work with who in a program called Youth Back on Track. So young people with just some social and emotional or social issues, we pull them into a workout class and we do that, and then we do a mental health session over breakfast. And I try my hardest to outlift all the young boys, and I'm currently on par with them. So that's pretty good to build a relationship and, you know, trust and rapport with them. I go into work. I will counsel young people, mainly around mental health at the moment, DV, housing, those sort of things. I spent my day working with TAG, so trustee and guardian. I was able to get guardianship orders on a client with chronic medical resistant schizophrenia, just because he was falling between the gaps, and he has been for a really long time with other services. So that was quite a success. So now, you know, we are hopefully able to get him a bit more stable with accommodation and all these other things that he really wants and needs into his, you know, journey of the rest of his life and how that's going to look like for him. I did 3 home visits today. I love home visits. They give an opportunity for people to see the family network in their natural and safe environment that's less clinical, like in our medical service sometimes. And then I take calls and support our doctors and nurses who I work with if anyone's suffering any sort of mental health distress or if something has arisen that they need support with. And then I work with the midwives in our team as well. So social work is very diverse. Like I said, you can plan a perfect day. It won't happen that way. But you just got to be up for it. Just embrace difference and always be open to learning, because I've been, you know, graduated for a few years now and I'm still learning different things every day, and a lot of different things from clients themselves are teaching me.
So it's interesting that you say that, Nicola, because I kind of, you know, listening to every single one of you talk there, you're working with people at kind of the pointy moments of life. Like, you know, Mark, you're working with people who are transitioning from very restricted system back into life. Shadrach, you're working with people when, you know, their mental health is not at its greatest. And Nicola, it seems like you're working with absolutely everybody in Coffs Harbour.
Yeah, pretty much.
Such a part of that community. And, you know, you're working with everything from, you know, babies through to you know, adults.
Yeah, and I think it's that expressing that early intervention is the key in everything. In any job that you do, working with young people, working with parents, working, you know, with them and in their community will solve a lot more issues and problems. And I think a lot of emphasis on early intervention would be my little take-home message.
Yeah, I mean, my question for all of you, you know, you're working with people at points in their lives where most of us, you know, if we had a loved one or a friend who was going through those things, like we would describe that as a tough time for us to be supporting them. What are the challenges for you as, you know, workers in this space, and how do you kind of, like, I'm sure you have days where you just go home and you think, what was that day? Mark, like, what do you do when that happens?
I try as much as possible to work on, like, as I said at the beginning, I work on the relationship with the young person, and sometimes their families, right from the beginning. So when it comes to times when they're not at their best, you can fall back on that work with them, and I'm fairly lucky that I work in long-term care, you would say. Like I've worked previously where I might be working with a young person for 3 to 4 weeks, and then I probably wouldn't see them again. Whereas in the situation where I am now, and with the organisation we work with, I'm with them for 3 months inside prison, and then like minimum 6 months outside of prison to maximum. We've employed some of the young people that have come through the program to work, as facilitators or crew leaders. So, I've got relationships with guys that I worked with while they were in prison that they were there 4 years ago was probably the longest. So, those days where, the tough days, I would, you've really got to look at your self-care, and make sure that, you're okay. They talk, when you get on a plane, you put the face mask on first before you assist anyone else. So if you're not looking after yourself, it's pretty hard to help other people in their time of need. So for me, I've got 2 young kids that keep me pretty grounded, and then and exercise and hobbies and stuff like that I fall back on to switch off. So it's I think you just got to be pretty consistent with your self-care.
I like that analogy about putting your face mask on first. Shadrach, what are your kind of techniques for dealing with some of the tougher days at work?
Right. So basically what I try to do is I try to keep my self-care at its apex. So my self-care includes having time with my family, calling friends and, having conversation, catching up with friends, during the weekends to have social soccer, just to interact with each other. And then going for a walk and doing a bit of exercise just to keep me going. But whenever experiencing anything like this with a client, what I also do is to actively listen to the clients and understand their situation, and also validate, and then work together with them to address the concerns that they have. So it could be referring them to another, support, or providing, that encouraging words, letting them, allowing them to have that belief in themselves that, yes, they're going through difficult times, but that is not the end of everything. And so, you give them that encouragement that, yes, it's hard, but then with a bit of, step-by-step hard work, things will fall in place with them, just to assure them that, things will work out, as time goes on, and to let them have that sense of belonging and, that sense of purpose for themselves, that, they are capable and able to do, a lot for themselves, with the help that they have. That's what I try to do, to keep me going. Social work field, like Nicola and Mark has said, it's diverse, it's every day and what you face. You can plan your day nicely, but then you go and then things is totally different. And you just have to be able to work around it, manage yourself well, and then be able to keep on doing what you're doing to support people that are in your care or are involved with you. Yeah,
it's good to have those kind of strategies that you've got, and they're really clear. I think we can talk a lot about self-care, but unless you kind of know what that is for you and articulate it, then it can be a bit difficult. Nicola, how do you deal with the more difficult parts of your job?
When I came out of social work, I was very, very eager, trying to hold the whole world and trying to really prove myself and, you know, do it all. And then I was quickly burning out. So I really had to take a step back and reflect, like, if I'm going to stay in this career, which I love, and that's why I went and studied this, I need to do it in a way that's going to give me some self-preservation as well. Mindfulness and self-love is so important. I think we hold so many clients and we just have to be really honest with ourselves and be realistic. There's no I in team, and we are surrounded by teams of people in different agencies that we can reach out to for support. There's housing, there's education, there's, you know, all these other people that it's also their job as well. You know, we can bounce off each other and support, because it does take a village to raise a child, and it does take a community to support an individual. So I think when, you know, I can be really frustrated and, you know, overwhelmed, and I just have to take a step back and realize, like, oh no, it's not me, it's the systems and the structures and the way that things that were designed, that it's just failing communities, and that's the problem. Those systemic issues are the problem, not me being incapable of my job.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, I'm sure one that everybody working in the field has come across. Jamila, I'm kind of curious from a student perspective, and I can see you've answered the question about contact hours. So thank you for sharing that. If people want to have a look at that in the chat. As a student of social work, you know, you talked before about how you cover all the different subject matter you cover. This stuff here that we're talking about, like, does the uni kind of help prepare you for, you know, managing yourself as a social work practitioner?
I think so. And I have so much respect for hearing everyone's perspective, because obviously I'm not working in the industry yet. I work with young people as my job, but I'm not in the social work industry yet. So I don't know. So I can't speak from that perspective, but I do believe ACU has set me up for those. And it is something that I appreciate that the lecturers have talked quite open and honestly about, that this can be a high burnout area, that this can be a really overwhelming space. Even learning some of the content, there's trigger warnings, there's content warnings, because this stuff can be quite overwhelming even to hear. So you can't even imagine what it would be like to work with, because it's hard to see another human in that being in that much pain. I think one of the things that I really appreciate is them teaching you that about self-care and how important it is for yourself, but also the community, as they were saying, like the community of social workers and the multiple disciplinary team all coming together, because you do care about humans and you care about the world and you want the best for society, I guess, but also in teaching that it's a real honor to work with people in these really vulnerable positions, and it's almost a privilege that you have that people are letting you into, not always letting you in, but they are making space for you to come in at a time when they're most vulnerable, and that's a really cool thing in a way, that you get to work with people. But I also appreciate from the ACU perspective, from a social work perspective, is it's not just about working on an individual's mental health. And while a lot of the work can be one-on-one and individual stuff, it's also about looking at the bigger structural and systemic levels. And that can feel really empowering for me, because when I think about it, I think, oh, it's so huge and overwhelming. But when I look at social work, it's not just looking at the individual and pathologizing them. It's looking at the big, more systemic ways that we can help people and that we can support people on a better level, so that there's better access and that we don't get to breaking points for people. And I find that really supportive to learn about as well. And that gives me hope and courage for the future, that if we can keep working both on individual levels in supporting people, but then on those bigger structural levels, that we can make a better change, I guess. And yeah, doing that, like self-care, but also like connecting with your community. And yeah, I find that really supportive. And I think ACU has really been open and honest about what the work can be like, and been really supportive in what you can do to counteract the burnout.
Thank you for kind of sharing that perspective about what happens at the uni, and apologies, I'm having lots of fun trying to keep up with the chat and keep the conversation going as well. You kind of talked a little bit there, Jamila, about one of the questions that has come in, which is, do social workers or youth workers work a lot with mental health or well-being? Would it be better to study, or would it be better to study something else? And if so, what? I might put that to Shadrach, because I know you've got a very specific mental health social work role. And I am aware too that social workers can, after certain amounts of time, go into, you know, the mental health space. So Shadrach, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Right. So the question is, yeah, so in response to this question, you come across different situations. So you have people who have got mental health issues, you have who have got DV issues, you have people who have got family issues, you have people who have got financial or economic issues, you have people who are having accommodation support or on the verge of being homeless. So there's a diverse or numerous areas, not only mental health and well-being. So depending on you as an individual and the passion or the interest you have while pursuing social work, that will determine what you will do once you graduate successfully and then you are in the field. So you are able to learn all the stuff you do at uni, but once you come to the field, the things that I have already mentioned are some of the things that you'll be encountering. There's a lot. I can't say everything. There's so much to it. So these are the things that you will come across once you are in the field. And just quickly to also provide some response to the other question regarding where, you know, one can work as a social worker. Again, it's numerous. You can work as a social worker in family and children care. You can work in the corrections or prisons facilities like Mark is doing. You can work with most of the non-governmental organizations that are in the community providing, you know, psychosocial support for people who are having various issues or various concerns or problems. You can work with government. Most of the government departments, Department of Health, Department of Social Services, Centrelink, Services Australia, Comcare, most of the government departments, you have social workers working over there. And then obviously too, you can also come to the community and also at the hospital setting. So there's, again, a wide, you know, range of places or institutions where the services of social workers are required, that, you know, they are always looking to social workers to have the opportunity to come into such areas to contribute to, you know, to the development and support for people who are involved in such institutions. Yeah.
That's a great summary, Shadrach. Somebody's also asked if, because you've done the Masters of Social Work, if you could tell us a little more about the field work that you had to do as part of your degree, you know, maybe specifically, you know, what kind of blocks of social work you did and where maybe you did your field work.
Thank you. So, you know, earlier on, Jamila talked about some of the courses that you do at the bachelor level. It's similar at the master's level. So I did social work with people with mental health, social work in a community. I did ethics, and, you know, so basically we did similar courses, but for masters, it's at a higher level. In terms of my experience, I had my first placement with an organization called Wellways Australia. It's a mental health organization, and it's a residential facility where you have people coming in for support around psychosocial support, recovery, person-centered, and ongoing support. So that was my first placement experience. And during that period, I had the opportunity to work one-on-one with clients. And just want to emphasize that it was my first time working with clients whilst I was studying. So whilst I was studying, there wasn't any opportunity for me to encounter clients. I was doing different job, but then during the placement was the opportunity to meet with clients, work with them, work in a diverse team to address the concerns of clients. And by working with clients during my placement, I got to understand how, people having issues with their mental health and other, economic or social issue, how they see things, and how, as a support worker or as someone working with this person, how you are able to understand their situation, and then you work together. I keep emphasizing the fact that you are working together because clients are experts in everything that you're going through. You as a support worker or as a social worker, your role is to, work with them, facilitate the things that will help them to address the things they are going through. So it's not like you going there and telling them, do this, do that, do that. No, it's just working with them, understanding them, and then going through the journey with them to get to a better outcome. So my placement experience was great. I really enjoyed, and the good thing out of it was once I successfully completed my placement, I had a position with the organization as a casual. So I started working with the institution. And then my second placement was with child and youth protection. And it was also a different learning opportunity altogether. And basically working with children and their families, making sure that children have got the opportunity to grow and be nurtured into, good citizens. So overall, my placement experiences were great, and I did learn a lot from both. Yeah, so there's huge opportunity out there, regarding where you would want to do your placement and all the experiences that you will be looking forward to acquiring or gaining throughout the placement period.
And that second placement of yours is full-time for how many months?
For approximately 3 months, 500 hours worth of placement. So both first and second placement all sums up to 1,000 hours of placement. So 3 months for each placement.
Great, thanks, Shadrach. Mark, did you do a placement in your youth work course, and where did you go?
Yeah, I did two. So we had one where our first placement was kind of like a soft placement in a way. So we did 2 hours a week for the semester, over 12 weeks, with Collingwood Primary School, which predominantly take on newly arrived young people and children into the primary school. So that was good, and that was more like you're working as a teacher's aide in a way for 2 hours a week. And then for my second placement, I was out at Vincent Care, Victoria, out in Glenroy, which is in Melbourne's north, and that was a homeless organisation. So that was great, and that was 200 hours. And I was offered a job before that placement finished, which was really good. Yeah, so I can't recommend the placements enough through AC. I think they've got a partnership with them now. But at the time, I think as a student at that time, it was quite difficult. Like we had to get our own placements. But I ended up just getting a classmates. They got a placement, and then I rode their coattails and got in through them. So it was good to have a network
Yeah.
before leaving uni.
Yeah.
but yeah, and then yeah, we both were employed before the end of our degree. Yeah. So it was really good.
That's great. That's great to hear. Nicola, where did you do your placements?
Also touching on what Mark just said, it's very resourceful of you to network and find placements. I think we do that every day, you know, making connections with other people, like saying different professions, maybe working in that multidisciplinary space. It all counts and all helps to have people's contacts always. I studied in Canberra on Ngunnawal country. We did 3 placements during the bachelor. I think it's changed now to 2. So I did my first placement at the Gungahlin Child and Family Centre, so working early intervention with parents and carers and their little ones. And I never really wanted to work with kids, and I did that placement and I absolutely loved it. I was offered a job, so I worked there throughout my whole degree, and then for a year after I graduated as well. Love that space. My second placement was at Wellways, actually in Woden, so working with women with mental health issues around enhancing their current lifestyle experience, I guess. And my third placement was up in Mount Isa. It was supposed to be at the hospital. Something happened when I arrived, and my supervisor had retired or left, so I went to Mount Isa. It took me 3 days to drive there in my little Suzuki Swift from Canberra, but I ended up just jumping on board with the Headspace team up there. So it was good rural, regional, very rural experience.
That's resourceful.
Yeah.
Finding yourself a placement that quickly. It's an interesting, because one of my questions that I always pre-prepare is, you know, how was your experience finding a job after you graduated? And I think, you know, hearing from every single one of you, you know, there's so much opportunity out there that, you know, you were all snapped up for jobs while you were on prac, because there is such a high need in this space for good people. So I think the lesson for anybody tuning in is, you know, be great on your prac, be open-minded and see where that opportunity can lead you. Somebody did ask a little bit earlier, and this will probably be the final question before we start to wrap up. Thank you for sharing experiences of where you've done prac or where you've worked. Are there any, beyond those that we've already spoken about, Mark, are there any kind of spaces that youth workers work that you think people wouldn't expect?
Good question. I know for me, like when I was a student, I thought my best, like what I was aiming for would be like a youth worker in a school. That's just because that's the only experience I've had with youth workers. And then I wasn't too sure about like the different areas and that sort of stuff. It's only now that, you know, got more experience and everything like that. And I know the industry that, like, I think what people don't expect, but it's becoming a lot more popular, is social enterprises that are coming up. And social enterprises, for those that don't know, they run like normal businesses, but the main goal is to create social impact instead of commercial impact. So our social enterprise works. We're a construction and maintenance social enterprise. So we employ young people out of prison, and then we transition them on after 6 to 12 months to a larger organisation. But you know, where we run, that part of the business runs as a commercial business. Yeah, and there's so many that are popping up. I know here in Melbourne there's a whole heap, and they're all in different industries. So you can kind of I guess now you can kind of pick like an industry that, you know, you might be familiar with or that you enjoy, and then and work in the youth work setting or the social work setting in those industries. For example, there's Street, which are hospitality focused, so they run cafes. There's Homey, which is a fashion label that do great work in with young people experiencing homelessness. And then Good Cycles is a bike company that do a lot of repairs for the, you know, work on bikes and do repairs for the Uber bikes and stuff like that, like the Lime bikes. So there's a lot of different options now, and they're and it's only getting bigger. So I think I feel like, well, it's probably because I'm in the industry now that I understand it a lot better. But I I thought that the scope for youth workers was very small and narrow when I was studying. So I feel like now there's a lot of options.
Nicola, where would you say surprised you that social workers could end up?
I actually had a meeting a couple of months ago at Google. So they're taking on the educational space, like their Google Classroom, and I'm helping them shape what does well-being look like in that space. So, Google are hiring social workers to develop, this, I guess, space for well-being for people accessing Google Classroom. And it's not just students, it's everyone accessing Google. So how are social workers playing a role in this incredibly massive, one of probably the world's biggest enterprises? I think that was like pretty cool. I've done a bit of work with like AFL and NRL to do well-being stuff. Just like consulting on that, and how does social work play a role in so many different avenues and spaces. And yeah, I didn't think of that when I was studying.
That Google thing's amazing, like, because it's so necessary, and that's just set off my phone. It's now trying to respond to me. But that, is amazing because it's such a space where social workers are so obviously needed.
Social workers have such a comprehensive knowledge base. Like, we touch on health and we do the biomedical, but we do the social and the holistic. We have such this degree for me is going to set up my whole life. Like, I will always have a job in any space that I am interested in, because I've learned so much, but I have so much to give now with the knowledge that I was given.
Now you've made me want to do social work, Nicola. I'm going to wrap up with a final question. Just before I do that, Geordie, if you could share the link to the survey, we will be, you've already read my mind, you're amazing. Where we'd love to hear from you about how you found this webinar. These are kind of the first kind of iterations we've done of many of these, and we want to know what you want to hear in these. So please do fill out that survey. Shadrach, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to ask each of you this before, I guess, we wrap up. But I'll ask you as well, Jamila, so get your thinking cap on. What advice would you give to someone considering a career in your profession?
That's a very good question. Firstly, what I'll encourage each and every individual who is aspiring to become a social worker to firstly assess yourself, know what you are capable of doing. 2, the interest you have in a particular area that you want to work. Social work, I believe, is about relationship, as Max said earlier on. It's about working with people, and you are going to encounter people of different backgrounds. I come from a card background. I'm originally from Ghana. I've lived in Australia for close to a decade. There are others like me that you encounter in your work with social work. So it's very important, one, you have that passion, that interest to be able to work with people with diverse backgrounds. Once you are able to get all of this, I believe your work in the social work field will be successful. If you, again, assess yourself and you believe that this is not your area, I think it will be appropriate for you to look into other places where you think your interests or your abilities or capabilities will fall. But I believe overall, social work is an opportunity to relate with people, understand what they are going through, be there for them, listen to them, go along their journey with them, Let them have that sense of purpose, that sense of belonging, that sense of help. And I believe you'll be able to thrive in this profession. Otherwise, I think you just have to look at areas that you think will benefit you. So this is basically what I would say to advise the up and coming, students or young ones who are wanting or aspiring to become social workers. Yeah.
Thanks, Shadrach. Mark, what advice would you give potential youth workers?
Yeah, I would say go for it. It's one of the best decisions I've made, and it was one of those things. And I said at the beginning that like I never intended to get into the industry, and it was just kind of taking the opportunities when they came. But advice wise, I would say. I just had it in my head now. I forgot it. But it's I would say it's really rewarding, and you'll get a lot of people when you tell people that you're a social worker or a youth worker, they'll say, "Oh, it must be a really rewarding job," every time, and it actually is, because I've got friends that and in different industries and that sort of stuff, and a lot of the time it revolves around if they're going well at work, it's like a financial gain that they've made for the company or for themselves. But when the best part is even these little things, you get these little kicks during the day, and that's like an extra 10K in your bank account in a way. I worked with a young guy, and he was drinking a lot of soft drink, and like this is how to a lot of people it might be small and everything like that, but and I just worked with him a bit, and then he started drinking a lot more water, and then completely got rid of soft drink out of his life. I actually saw him in prison not long ago, which is not great, but he remembered me as the guy that made him give up soft drink, and he's still giving up to this day. So that was like a little thing for me. Doesn't remember my name, but remembered that I made him give up soft drink, and little things like that puts a smile on your face and makes you think that you're doing something right. So
yeah, no, that's great. You can put that on your headstone, Mark.
Yeah.
Make so and so give up soft drink successfully.
That's it.
Jamila, what would be your advice for anybody considering studying social work?
Do it. Just definitely do it. Maybe have a little bit of a look at why you'd like to do it, because it can help just before you go in, because your values and everything may be questioned a little bit, and that's okay. That's a really good thing. It means you're growing and you're learning how to work and support people in the best way possible. Be really kind to yourself. It can be a really big burnout, hectic area, both to study and to work in. So try and get your supports going, either emotional, whether it's internal or external. And just get into it. We really need some more people in the area. We need people who are passionate. If you're passionate about connecting with people in any way, I would say that youth work and social work is a really good place for everyone to join, and we need people from a diverse range of backgrounds and a diverse walks of life to come in and work together. And the big thing that I would say is that you're not working for someone, you're working alongside someone, which is really, really awesome. And you get to be part of people's journeys, and I think that that's the coolest thing in the world. So get into it.
Excellent. And Nicola, what great piece of advice do you have for aspiring social workers or youth workers?
You'll be happy that you did it. There's going to be some testing times, and it is rewarding, and there's things where you can opt out and it's like, I'm going to take a break, I'm going to go work in policy, and you can do that as a social worker. You can work in non-facing roles if that's what you want, and I think just enjoy the ride. I was like a bit unsure because I did nursing, and then I was like, oh no, I'm going to start social work as a mature age student. And then at the end of the day, I was like, okay, in 4 years, I'm still going to be the same age I am. I'm still going to be 26 in 4 years or whatever. However, am I going to have a degree or not in doing a job that I actually have always aspired to be and doing? So, just go in with an open heart and a willingness to learn, and you'll find your you'll find your groove of what social work can do for you and what you can bring to the space and youth work. You'll find your niche and you'll fit that space and they'll be lucky to have you.
Thanks, Nicola. And thank you, Nicola, Mark and Shadrach, for joining us, taking time out of what sounds like very busy lives to join us and share a little bit about your professional experience. This is an area, working in future students, that a lot of students that I work with don't really know what it is. So being able to hear from people that are actively out and about doing this amazing work has been really interesting. And I want to thank you all for sharing so openly your experiences of the profession. And Jamila, thank you for joining us and sharing your experience as a student. I'm going to wrestle with technology again. If you do have any further questions about studying either of these courses, how do I get into it? What's the ATAR? You know, those questions about what kind of prac you need to do, you can get in contact with us through our Ask ACU service, via text, via phone, via email. You can also follow us on social media. We would love to speak to you about both of these amazing areas. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.